Going on in this video, but I'm going to take a look at one little piece of it. So click the links to it, join the channel here over at Subscribestar. So what is going on is you have these obese American blue-haired angry feminists who feel that they need to lecture Japan on pro-shipper comics. Basically, they're angry because the artist followed the wrong artist. And you probably ask, well, why is that anyone's business? Well, that's because that's the deeper philosophy of SJWs in general. The left has to control people. It's kind of its own separate video about their philosophy, but essentially they can't leave us alone to do our own thing, because then you'd have something that exists to compare and contrast with their system. And if we go off and do our own thing, it's going to be a fun group of people doing something that they enjoy, and it's going to be probably more often successful than not. And they just can't have that, because when they're sitting around doing their own thing, it's a miserable. Like if you see it's a miserable group of people. If you see, there's a video on YouTube where it's some like Socialist Club of America. They have their meeting. It's an hour-long video where they're like, they waste a third of the meeting talking about their pronouns and who they prefer to try to mate with. I mean, is it really even mating if you can't produce offspring? All this kind of nonsense about what geography they're on. It's like, humans have moved around and taken over land. It's like, no, this is sacred land. Well, is European land sacred? No, that's fine. That's fine. You can just erase those people. Like that, your logic doesn't make sense. It's just, you just hate yourselves. You're mentally ill. And anyway, a third of that socialist meeting was taken up with this kind of nonsense. You're looking like, you guys are not ever going to accomplish anything if like you have this much wasted time. So anyway, it's one of the reasons that they very much hate Japan, or really anything that something like a men's club drives them crazy. It's like, why would you let it bother you? It's like, it's not for you. It's for some kind of men's whatever club, or something like Comicsgate, or any sort of group that has in-group preferences and excludes people who don't share their values or their identity. That's cool. Japanese art is just so much fun. It's just so lighthearted. They look like they're just having a good time doing it. And then you look at Amerifat comics, you're like, oh, these people are miserable. And then you look at the artists behind the American comics, like, oh, yes, they are miserable. They're the Mark Wades and the Gail Simones of the world. Like, just a more miserable collection of mentally ill people you'll never find in American comics. Like a couple years ago, when I started to look behind the scenes of this industry, it's a window into a madhouse. Like legitimate, flat out mentally ill people are like, oh, they're all in this industry and they have control over this industry. And not only that, but they're running this thing redline without any oil or water, and they're just absolutely destroying it. You're like, yeah, so all those things are true. It's like, anyone gonna maybe try to stop them and turn this thing around? Like, no, this train has no brakes. It's all downhill. So if you want to see a great example of this, check out, there's a couple of Satire temple videos. It's some kind of like Northern European religion type of thing on YouTube, and the comments will show it's just a group of people who are doing their own thing. They're not hurting anyone. It's not a church. It's just it's its own thing. It's like some kind of Scandinavian type of a religion thing, and you have to be presumably Northern European to take part of it, like Odinism type of stuff. So the comments, but it's like it's a group of people who are not harming anyone. So of course Vice News has to do like an interview, and they send a I think a black reporter to ask to interview them, and it's like it's just a normal group of people who are practicing their religion. And she goes, oh, so can I join the church? It's like, you're not Northern European. I couldn't join the church either. I'm not Scandinavian. I think it's for Scandinavians. Anyway, it's just nonsense. But if you read the comment section, it shows you how outraged SJWs get when you have a group that has rules that exclude them. SJWs or Bolsheviks cannot allow that. Like other groups can be totally fine. They can have their own groups and they can exclude you, but you can't exclude them. It's like, it doesn't make sense. They can't allow you to go off and do your own thing and gatekeep, because it shows how weak their philosophy is. Like whatever they're going to do is not going to be as fun as what you guys, as what, we're doing. It's that 4-panel meme of, a bunch of guys go off and create something, and they want to diversify it, inclusive it, and equitabilize it. And then they just destroy it and they kick out the original people. And then the second meme is the guys have a flamethrower and they say, no, just get the F out of here. We are going to gatekeep, and we're going to keep you out. Anyway, so Comicsgate is a great example because it's really loose. It's just a group of people who don't want to be around SJWs. And they're tired of this, this misandrist blonde man bad type of narrative that you see in the mainstream now. It's mostly a right of center group, but it's more that it's just not politically correct, which there are left of center people who are not on board with political correctness. They're pro free speech, and that confuses the left because they can't have, like, if you're really going to go left, Bolshevik, socialist, globalist, you can't have comedy, you can't have free speech, you can't have a lot of things, and they will work tirelessly to shut all those things down. So we're tired of childless, obese soy people who think that they have the moral high ground on anything, because we know how awesome we are, and we are. Why would we want to be around these haters who are miserable all the time and blame European people every time they stub their toe? During the Trump years, the SJWs would post pictures before the Wu flu, when they're putting panties in front of their face. They would post pictures, and they always had the same look. This like half a smirk smile where they were pissed off, and as if you try to ask them, like, yeah, it's your icon photo. Why don't you put a little smile in there, put a little effort in there, try to sell yourself to the people who are going to engage with you. Like, what do we have to smile about in Trump's America? Am I right? And then the panty phase came where they were wearing panties in front of their face, and the only thing you could see was their angry. There was the NPC meme of the angry eyebrows. I was like, wear your panties in front of your face, and they put a little period and a clap emoji before all this kind of stuff, and wash your hands, period, before every. It's just ridiculous, and I guess that's kind of phased out. So then now they're still angry, and you go, but you got Biden in office. What are you angry about? Like, I don't know. They're just angry about everything. So, dear blue-haired land whale American SJWs, please shut the F up. Before you single cat ladies and soy boys lecture Japan on anything, why don't you go fix Detroit and Chicago? For how dare you mention those cities? Why wouldn't I mention those cities? Japan doesn't have those kind of things. I'm not a Japanophile or whatever you call those people, but America is getting to be a third world S-hole. So it really blows my mind that obese SJWs would lecture anyone, anywhere, on anything. Japan is a functional society. America is a violent, crime-ridden hellhole. It really takes a stellar lack of self-awareness to be an Amerifat sucking down the burgers and high-fructose corn syrup, sports balls, soy slop, prawn, and globalist propaganda, and then waddle around thinking that they can lecture anyone on anything. How do you reach levels of myopia like this? Well, via generations of participation trophy brainwashing, by listening to government schools and global homogenization. I said that very carefully for YouTube. Media, and never thinking critically about anything, just accepting the propaganda and slowly becoming scared to ask questions because it's haram, which is what the media wants. The government and media absolutely do not want you to think critically and ask questions and demand evidence. The truth doesn't fear investigation. It's like, oh, that's a far right dog whistle. No, it's not. You're just so deep in a propaganda echo chamber that you think it is. They want you to listen and believe, as long as it's believe them. Asking questions and looking at evidence is another far right dog whistle, and not trusting the media is a right wing value now. It's like, okay, fine, challenge accepted, because the media and government are lizards in these human flesh suits. Anyone who doesn't want you asking questions is lying to you. Use my pronouns, bigot. No, I can't do that because that's a lie. You get the idea. Obey the narrative. Don't stop to question. You go like, well, what if I disagree with your narrative? I've analyzed the issue, the argument, and I've reached a different conclusion because I don't feel that your argument reaches your conclusion. I'm reaching a separate one. Oh, you can't do that. But don't you value diversity of thought? Not so much. Turns out they really, really don't. So anyway, it seems like the people who hold the strongest insane beliefs got them from Hollywood and government schools and not from books. And I don't think anyone under 40 reads books regularly anymore. They have their nose in a phone or tablet reading the short attention span sound bite bits of degenerate propaganda. If they try to sit and read a book, they get frustrated because it requires a long period of concentration. When we were kids, a lot of us, for our downtime, was spent reading. And the further back you go, the more that becomes commonplace. That doesn't happen as much anymore because of tablets, phones, and video games. And you have generations of the most naive, gullible, disabled people in history. They think that they learned something because Hollywood showed it in a movie. That's how insanely naive people are. They learn things from government schools in Hollywood, and they think they learned something, and then they try to go and lecture other people on the propaganda that they were programmed to regurgitate. It never stops to dwell in the cognition area of the brain. It's just they hear something and they parrot that information and they get the little dopamine from social media validation. But you never pause and go, but is the thing you're parroting true? It's like, what would it take for it not to be true? Have you looked at the evidence? Are the sources biased? And once you start down that path, you start looking at it, goes, oh, wait, these sources are biased. Look who owns this company. Look who the parent company is. Look who the umbrella holding company is. And you start tracing it back, like, oh, this source is biased. The people who made this narrative for this show are biased. Huh. I read this book and it's, oh my God, the author's biased. Yeah, you got to start thinking critically. Those are far right wing dog whistles. Thinking critically is a far right wing value. It's like, okay, I mean, fine. We're okay with that. Japan is Japan. You don't have to accept the stuff they do. It's not my cup of tea if I'm just keeping it at 100 with you. But it's Japan. It's like what kind of hubris does it take for a Westerner, an Occidental, to look at the East? I won't say that equivalent on YouTube because now that's politically incorrect also, and think, oh, I need to impose my values, my worldview, and my value system on them, or I'm going to take my sailboat and close the ports, gunboat diplomacy. It's like, why do you think that makes you the winner there? Like, how you tell that story and come across as being the winner? They do things their own way. It would be the same as like telling anyone from any different group of people. Like ultimately, this is a deeper issue of the concept of globalism versus nationalism. It's the idea of drawing borders around yourself and saying, this is us, you're not us. We're going to do things our way over here. We have this right of assembly and self-association, self-identity. These are our values, or even this is our identity. Like with the Satire, I think it's Scandinavian. This is for those people, and you want to go off and form your own thing. And the Satire thing I mentioned because it's so fascinating to see the response when you start to break out of the matrix a little bit. Like these people have picnics and they have a little temple and they do their own thing. And the weird thing about that is there was that video. It came out a couple years ago. And the comment section was one way. It was mostly SJWs against the temple. And then a couple months later, another video similar to the Vice video came out, but it was another company that did essentially the same video investigating it. And they're trying to portray it as like a Roman saluting type of thing. And it's not. And then the comment section had completely changed. It was mostly in favor of this group of people doing their own thing. Asatru, Amish, Mormons, Mennonites, all kinds of groups who have their own self-identity, self-association. And it was weird because it was 2 months later. I look at this comment section like, huh, a lot, or a couple months later, it's like a lot has changed in people's worldview where they realize, oh, maybe we just there's less conflict if we just kind of go off in our own groups and do our own things. Because you try things and you go, it doesn't make sense to have these groups and force them together and they're just endlessly arguing over everything. It'd be better to not do that, and that's kind of what they're anyway. Japan is Japan. They have different values. If you respect diversity, that has to include diversity of thought. And even something like this is a little. They draw the bodies, but then the faces are young. It's like, it's just what they do. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to partake of it, but to tell another artist that they can't follow an artist or something, that's the weird thing about American SJWs is the need to tell other people what to do. Instead of you looking at them like, oh, why don't you just do your own thing? No, I need to control you. Otherwise my thing won't work. You know how that story goes. Anyway, comment, subscribe, join the Subscribe Star, and I will see you guys all next episode.